What would you do if the richest man on the planet, yes, the man who transformed online shopping forever, walked into your store dressed like a regular customer? Picture this: no entourage, no flashing cameras, no suits. Just an unassuming man in jeans and a hoodie, blending into the crowd. Now, imagine this. Instead of being welcomed with open arms, he's humiliated, dismissed, and ultimately kicked out. Sounds unbelievable, right? But that's exactly what happened. And trust me, what comes next will leave you speechless. This is the story of Jeff Bezos, billionaire, visionary, and the unexpected guest of a struggling store he was moments away from acquiring. But here's the kicker: no one knew who he was. Not the employees. Not the manager. Especially not the manager. What started as a simple visit to assess operations turned into a dramatic showdown that would change everything. Secrets were exposed, lessons were learned, and one man's arrogance led to a twist that no one, absolutely no one, could have seen coming. Buckle up, because this story will keep you on the edge of your seat. Jeff Bezos, one of the most influential minds of our time, was never one to lead from behind a desk. For years, his philosophy was simple yet powerful. To understand the challenges of any business, you have to see them firsthand. This time, his focus was on a small chain of underperforming stores he had recently acquired. While the financial reports and analytics painted a grim picture, Jeff knew numbers only told part of the story. So, he devised a bold plan. He wouldn't send a corporate team or issue directives from his luxurious office. Instead, he would disguise himself, walk into one of these stores like an everyday customer, and experience its reality up close. If I can't fix it from the ground up, he thought, then I'm not doing my job. With that, he packed his bag, leaving behind the suits, the entourage, and the recognition that followed his name. A simple hoodie and a pair of jeans would be his armor for the day. Jeff was about to step into the shoes of an ordinary shopper, but he had no idea that this decision would lead to an unforgettable clash of egos and a life-changing lesson for everyone involved. The moment Jeff stepped through the doors of the store, the scene was exactly what he had anticipated, yet worse. Shelves were half-stocked, some disorganized, others entirely empty. The air was tense, filled with a kind of nervous energy as employees hurried past each other, avoiding eye contact. Jeff offered a polite smile to the first employee he saw, but it went unnoticed. Everyone seemed too busy, overwhelmed by the day's demands. He started wandering the aisles, observing the cracks in the system, poor inventory management, lack of customer engagement, and an overall sense of disarray. But it wasn't long before his quiet observation attracted attention from the one person he hoped to learn the most from, the store's manager, Mr. Taylor. With sharp eyes and an even sharper tongue, Mr. Taylor immediately sized Jeff up as someone who didn't belong. To him, Jeff was just another nosy shopper, someone with too many questions and no understanding of how hard retail work could be. "Can I help you?" Mr. Taylor asked, his tone dripping with impatience. Jeff, ever polite, responded, "Actually, I was wondering about your inventory system. It seems like..." But before he could finish, Mr. Taylor cut him off with a dismissive laugh. "Listen, buddy, unless you're here to buy something, I suggest you move along. We don't have time for curious types." The tension grew with each passing moment. Jeff's genuine questions about the store's operations were met with increasing hostility. Mr. Taylor's voice grew louder, his irritation more apparent. Employees watched the exchange out of the corners of their eyes, but none dared to intervene. To them, Jeff was just another meddling customer. To Mr. Taylor, he was an unnecessary distraction. But to Jeff, this was the exact insight he needed, a first-hand experience of how toxic leadership could cripple not only morale but the store's entire potential. Jeff nodded calmly, taking in the scene, the reactions, and the unspoken truths in the room. Little did Mr. Taylor know, the man he was belittling was moments away from making decisions that would shape the future of this very store, and the livelihoods of everyone in it. Jeff's questions were simple, thoughtful, and rooted in curiosity. Questions like, why are certain shelves perpetually empty? And what feedback do customers give the most? But to Mr. Taylor, These inquiries felt like an interrogation, and he didn't appreciate being challenged, especially not by someone who appeared to be just another meddling customer. With each question, Mr. Taylor's irritation grew. His responses became curt, dismissive, and laced with condescension. "Look," Mr. Taylor snapped, his voice cutting through the store like a whip, "this is retail. Things aren't perfect, and we don't have time to cater to every single complaint. Who do you think you are, some kind of retail expert? A business consultant?" Jeff's calm demeanor didn't waver. He smiled slightly, his tone measured. "No, not a consultant. Just someone who cares about how things work around here." But that response was like fuel on a fire. Mr. Taylor stepped closer, his frustration boiling over. "If you care so much, why don't you open your own store? Otherwise, get out before I call security." Around them, the employees were frozen, torn between fear and curiosity. Uneasy glances were exchanged, but no one dared to speak up. They had all seen Mr. Taylor's temper before and knew better than to challenge him. The tension was palpable. Jeff, now the target of Mr. Taylor's anger, stood unfazed. He didn't argue, didn't raise his voice, didn't fight back. Instead, he quietly observed, taking note not just of the manager's words but of the reaction from the staff. Their silence spoke volumes about the culture within the store. And while Mr. Taylor believed he had won the exchange, Jeff saw it as something much deeper, a symptom of a larger problem. Without another word, Jeff nodded, a faint, almost knowing smile crossing his face. "Thank you for your time," he said simply, his tone so composed it felt out of place amidst the tension. He turned and walked toward the door, leaving Mr. Taylor behind, still fuming. Employees watched as Jeff exited, some whispering to each other in confusion. "Who was that guy?" one murmured. "He didn't seem like just another shopper," another added cautiously. Yet, Mr. Taylor's voice cut through their doubts. He was nobody. Just some guy with too much time on his hands. Forget him and get back to work. But even as the employees returned to their tasks, their curiosity lingered. Jeff's calmness, his polite tone in the face of such hostility, it didn't add up. And though Mr. Taylor dismissed it entirely, a quiet unease had settled among the staff. Unbeknownst to them, Jeff wasn't just leaving. He was stepping back, preparing for his next move, a move that would shake the foundation of this store and its leadership. In the break room later that day, the employees gathered, their conversations hushed but filled with curiosity. "He didn't act like an ordinary customer," one said, glancing around to ensure Mr. Taylor wasn't nearby. "Did you notice how he asked those questions? Like he already knew the answers." Another nodded. "And the way he left, so calm. It was weird, right?" The group fell silent as the door opened, and Mr. Taylor entered with his usual bluster. He caught their nervous glances and let out a sharp laugh. "You're not still talking about that guy, are you? Let me save you the trouble. He's nobody. Just some wannabe who thinks he knows better than the rest of us. Move on." The employees exchanged uneasy looks but said nothing. Deep down, they couldn't shake the feeling that Mr. Taylor was wrong. Something about the stranger had felt different, important even. As the day went on, the seeds of doubt began to grow. Whispers spread among the staff, each retelling of the encounter adding to the mystery. Who was that man? Why had he been so composed in the face of Mr. Taylor's aggression? And most importantly, why did it feel like this wasn't the last they'd see of him? Little did they know, their instincts were right. The quiet stranger they had underestimated was about to return, not as a customer, but as the man who held their futures in his hands. The next morning, the store buzzed with the usual chaos. Employees shuffled through their routines, their minds still lingering on the strange customer from the day before. Then the unexpected happened. Jeff Bezos walked through the doors, but this time, he wasn't dressed in casual clothes. He was in a sharp, tailored suit, exuding an air of authority that was impossible to ignore. Flanking him was a small team of executives, their expressions stern and purposeful. The room fell silent. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Employees stood frozen, their eyes darting between Jeff and Mr. Taylor, who had been barking orders moments earlier. At first, Mr. Taylor's smirk flickered across his face. But as realization dawned, the confidence drained from his features. His expression shifted from confusion to shock and, finally, to panic. Jeff walked calmly to the center of the store, glancing around with the same critical eye he had used the day before. But this time, he wasn't a customer. He was the new owner, and everyone knew it. The silence was deafening as the weight of the moment sank in. This wasn't just a visit. It was a reckoning. Jeff turned to address the staff, his voice steady and commanding. "Good morning, everyone. First, let me commend you for your hard work. Running a store like this isn't easy, and I've seen firsthand the effort many of you put in, even under challenging circumstances." A ripple of relief and gratitude spread through the employees. But Jeff's tone shifted, becoming sharper. "However," he continued, "I also witnessed something troubling yesterday, something that shouldn't exist in any workplace. A culture of fear, disrespect, and hostility. And I'm here to make it clear that this ends today." All eyes were on Mr. Taylor, whose face was now pale. He tried to interject, stumbling over his words. "Mr. Bezos, I didn't know who you were. If I'd known..." Jeff held up a hand, silencing him. "Stop. Leadership isn't about knowing who someone is. It's about treating everyone with respect, whether they're a customer, an employee, or, yes, even the owner. What I saw yesterday was a failure of leadership, and this store, and these employees, deserve better." The room was electric with tension. Jeff's words carried an undeniable finality, and the staff hung on every syllable. Effective immediately, Jeff announced, his voice ringing out with authority, "Mr. Taylor will no longer be managing this store." Gasps echoed through the room, followed by a stunned silence. Mr. Taylor opened his mouth to protest, but no words came out. The decision had been made, and everyone knew there was no reversing it. He looked around, desperate for support, but found only the blank stares of employees who had endured his reign for far too long. His exit was swift, his head bowed in disgrace. With Mr. Taylor gone, Jeff turned back to the staff, his expression softening. "I know this store has faced challenges," he said, his tone now warm and encouraging. "But let me tell you something. Its success doesn't start with flashy ads or high-tech systems. It starts with you. You are the heart and soul of this business, and from this moment forward, you'll be treated as such." A wave of emotion swept through the employees. Some nodded, others exchanged hopeful glances. Jeff outlined his vision: higher wages, better training programs, and a workplace where every voice mattered. He promised regular check-ins with the team and emphasized creating an environment where employees felt valued and respected. "Change won't happen overnight," he acknowledged. "But together, we can transform this store into something extraordinary. And I'll be here every step of the way to ensure it happens." The room erupted into applause, the tension from earlier now replaced with hope and optimism. For the first time in a long while, the staff felt seen and heard. Jeff's final words left a lasting impression. "Remember, leadership isn't about titles or authority. It's about respect and responsibility. And together, we're going to build something that makes every one of you proud." As the employees celebrated, Jeff's team began laying the groundwork for the changes he had promised. And while Mr. Taylor's absence was a stark reminder of the store's past, Jeff's presence signaled a brighter future, one built on trust, respect, and the belief that every individual matters. And so, a seemingly ordinary day turned into an extraordinary lesson. This story isn't just about Jeff Bezos or a struggling store. It's about the values we carry with us every day, the power of respect, the importance of humility, and the impact of leadership that lifts others up rather than tearing them down. Leadership isn't about titles or authority. It's about how you treat the people around you, especially when no one is watching. Jeff's journey in that store wasn't just a test for the employees, it was a test for all of us to reflect on our own actions. Think about Mr. Taylor for a moment. His downfall wasn't just because he mistreated Jeff, it was because he created an environment of fear and disrespect. That culture doesn't just hurt the employees. It suffocates potential, stifles innovation, and ultimately, it leads to failure. Now contrast that with what Jeff showed us. Calmness in the face of rudeness, a willingness to listen, and an unyielding commitment to making things better for others. These are the traits of true leadership, the kind that inspires, empowers, and transforms. The lesson here is clear. Whether you're a manager, an employee, or someone walking into a store as a customer, remember this. You never know who you're interacting with or the impact your actions might have. Respect costs nothing but is worth everything. As Jeff walked out of the store, surrounded by smiles and gratitude, he left behind more than just promises of change. He left a spark, a hope that things could and would be different. The employees stood a little taller that day, their spirits lifted by the knowledge that their voices mattered and their efforts were seen. And while the store's shelves may have looked the same, the atmosphere had shifted entirely. This wasn't just a new chapter for the store, it was a new chapter for everyone in it. Sometimes, the greatest lessons come from the most unexpected places. A simple visit, a moment of kindness, or a quiet decision to do better can ripple out in ways we can't even begin to imagine. As you go about your day, remember this story. Choose respect. Choose humility. And choose to see the potential in everyone around you. You never know what kind of impact you might have. If this story left you inspired, we'd love for you to show some love by liking, sharing, and subscribing to our channel. Don't miss out on more incredible stories that remind us of the power of kindness, respect, and transformation. Your support means the world, and by subscribing, you're not just joining a community, you're becoming part of the journey. Stay tuned for even more unforgettable tales that will touch your heart, challenge your perspective, and leave you thinking long after the video ends. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button, and let's keep these amazing stories coming.